I would like to demonstrate how to do slip and score right now. That's our method for attaching two different pieces of clay. Anytime that you're going to attach two bigger pieces of clay, you must use slip and score, or it's very likely that your piece will break later. So I've already rolled out two slabs of clay, just some small pieces for example, and if I want to put these two pieces together at a corner, what I'm going to do is take a tool, and I'm just going to trace where it meets. So now I know what thickness this clay is, and I have to cross-hatch, just incise little marks into my surface that on each side where it's going to touch. So it's going to touch here and here. So I'm just going to take a tool. These marks don't need to be nice and neat or pretty because they're going to be completely hidden by the time the process is done. You do want to make sure you have a decent number of marks. The more marks, the better. And I'm going to do the same thing where the clay is going to touch over here. Again, the marks do not have to be nice and neat and pretty, but you do want a whole bunch of them. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a slip cup. Slip is your muddy, watered down clay. It's also called potter's glue because it is actually what we use to basically glue together our pieces of clay. You can use your finger or you can use a tool, whichever you prefer, and you're just going to cover the marks. You do not want to rub hard. If you rub the marks out, the slip and score technique will not work very well, so you want them to still be there. And you want to apply the slip fairly generously everywhere that you've cross-hatched. And then you can just rub any extra slip into your cup again so that we're not wasting it and save it for later. I'm going to line up my two pieces of clay where I want them to meet. And then I'm going to use some gentle pressure to push these together. Now, I have already let these pieces dry to a leather hard consistency so that they can handle this pressure. If it was still plastic clay and I was pushing down like this, it would bend significantly and you would end up with a box that would have a lot of bulges or dents in it. So waiting for it to get to this leather hard consistency is perfect. It still has enough moisture that it can bend a little. It's not brittle, but it is stiff enough to hold its shape. Now you can see I can already pick this up and these two pieces are holding together pretty well, but it is not finished yet. So what has happened at this point is the slip has gone in between those little crosshatch marks we've made. It's formed a bridge between it, and when it dries it'll form a mechanical bond. I can wipe away any excess slip really quick. And now what I need to do is I need to take a little piece of wet clay, and you want to use wet clay for this, you don't want to use anything very dry, and just roll it in between my hands to make it cool. We don't want one that's too thick, that would be more work for us, but we want it thick enough to cover the seam. And we need to put a cool anywhere that there is a seam. So I'm going to take it and push it into this crack on this side, cutting it off when I have enough. And then there's a seam on the other side as well, so I'm going to support from the inside, and I'm going to push this along that edge. Any extra coal you can ball back up and it can be wedged later to be used again to make something else. On the outside it's very easy to just take your finger and pull some of the clay up and some of the clay down. And we just want to smooth this out as much as we can. Any extra we can put in our scrap clay pile. And I want a nice crisp corner, so I'm going to make sure that I go back and forth a few times, pull any extra clay over the edge, smooth out any marks that are left. And when it's still a little bit wet, like the clay was from the cool, I might not get it perfectly smooth now, but I'll get it very close to perfectly smooth. And then later on in the process, if that area needs to be smooth more, when it's dried a little more, I can smooth it a little extra. So this now looks like this outside part was always one piece of clay. That's what we want it to look like. The inside still has this coal showing. It's good to find a tool for this part. I have one that has a flat edge here. So I'm going to take that tool and I'm going to pull half of that coal down. So half of it is on the part that was on the table. And then I'm going to pull the other half up on the wall of the clay. You can see it's starting to make that right angle. And I'm going to continue doing that all the way across. Half goes along one wall of the clay, half goes up the other wall. At this point it's still a little messy looking, so we just take our finger and we just rub out the extra clay from the coal. I'm supporting it on both sides of the outside so that it doesn't get deformed. If your clay is being really stubborn, you could always use a little bit of water to help you smooth it. Mine is very wet, so I do not need to do that. If an area is being really hard to reach into, you can use your tool a little more if you need to. And now we have a nice corner that's smooth on both the outside and the inside. And you can see it really looks like this clay was always one piece. It doesn't look like it was ever two pieces. Now something that's really important to note is that it's possible to stick together two pieces of clay without slipping and scoring and pulling some clay from one side to the other, and you could make it look like this. But when the clay would start to dry, the clay would not have a mechanical bond on the inside. So when the clay would start to dry, clay shrinks as it dries, and it would start to pull apart, and your clay would crack. So it's very, very important to understand that if you don't do the slip and score process correctly, you will end up with a piece that will crack and possibly fall apart on you. And as a note, just as a teacher, I must tell you that when I grade them, if that happens, that is one of the things I will take the most points off on, because your artwork is not going to last, it's not going to be durable at that point. And so if I come around the room and I ask you if you slip and scored, please be honest with me. If you didn't, we can still cut it apart and put it back together so that it will last for you.